Bandwidth for changelog is provided by Fastly. Learn more at fastly.com.
I'm Steve Francia, and it's go time.
It's Go Time, a weekly podcast where we discuss interesting topics around the Go programming language, the community, and everything in between. If you currently write Go or aspire to, this is the show for you. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Go Time. Today's episode is number 38, and our sponsors for today are Backtrace and the Ultimate Go Training Series. Today on the show, we have myself, Eric St. Martin. Carlicia Pinto is also on the show. Say hello, Carlicia.
Hi, everybody.
And standing in for Brian today, we have Johnny Borsico.
Hey, gang.
And our special guest today is a longtime member of the Go community and has a number of well-known projects that I'm pretty sure all of us have used, but recently became the community manager for the Go team. Please welcome Steve Francia.
Hey.
So, how's things in the Go community management world? You want to talk to us a little bit about, well, actually give everybody a little bit of a background on yourself first for anybody who may not be familiar with you already.
And tell us your correct title, because I don't think that's it.
That is not my correct title.
Oh.
So what we could start there. My correct title isn't all that accurate either, but I'm the Go team technical program manager with an emphasis on the external usage of Go. But it's really an interesting role that does have community management as a part of it. It's also a good element of it is product management, and largely I'm working to be a voice for the Go users to the Go team and help strategically align the Go project in a scalable way that meets the needs of all of its users.
So this is from the perspective of people outside of Google itself and their usage of Go and their needs, as opposed to kind of like internal.
It's all purpose, but it's not specific to Google's needs. So I treat Google like every other company that uses Go. We definitely are listening to their needs, but I'm not focused on those needs any more than I am, any company that uses Go.
So do you have a counterpart inside of Google who is sort of focused on what Google needs from Go? Or how does that strategy work out?
So there's another product manager that's focused on cloud usage, and he does both internal but primarily external usage. And there's I don't know if we have yet, but we're looking into bringing on someone similar to work with internal users and understand them a little better. But for the last few months, I've been kind of juggling both, and not well. I have to prioritize all users versus just one set.
Now, I remember when you first joined in this capacity at Google, one of the very first things you were involved in was sort of the whole dependency management conversation.
Yeah.
Is that something that you're sort of pushing internally, or did you just sort of bring it in as something to be addressed and then move on to other things? How does that relationship between the community and you sort of advocating on our behalf to Google, how does that work typically?
So, as someone, we didn't really go into my background yet, so I'll speak briefly to it because it's a good introduction to this topic. Prior to joining Google and the Go team at Google, I ran engineering and open source at Docker, and before that, I ran engineering and led open source and the developer experience at MongoDB. At Mongo, I first discovered Go. We adopted it for a number of our projects there. And I personally fell in love with the language and started working on some side projects, some of which have grown far larger than I ever would have expected them to. Hugo is one of them. It's a website generator. And as part of Hugo, when I sat down to write it, I knew how I wanted it to work, but there was libraries that I needed to create it that didn't exist yet. And so I wrote a number of libraries in tandem with Hugo. One of them is called Cobra, another is called Viper. And those have really been broadly adopted through the Go community. So I came in from having a unique perspective of using Go both for personal side projects as well as in a company environment. And having had those experiences, I was pretty familiar with some of the pains, and I'll call them rough edges, and dependency management was one. And I highlighted that one with the team. It wasn't something the team wasn't already aware of. The team does listen to the users and tries to understand. One of the challenges is that the team works inside the Google infrastructure, and so dependency management was something that they didn't have their own intimate familiarity with in the same way that the users experience it.
I think also in addition to that, though, there's also a distinction for like whose responsibility is it, right? Is dependency management part of the language or not, right?
Right. Yeah. So it's through a series of conversations, we've tried a couple different things. One was we formed a working group, and I was closely part of this. Peter version really drove this effort, and to kind of address this, the need, and it was a combination of people from the community and the Go team working together on it. We've also through that we've done a lot of diligence, had lots of conversations with different users trying to understand those needs. We're working on a prototype which has been released, and we're also looking at. I think we're coming to the conclusion that for it to really work, it needs to be something that the Go tooling is aware of, and the key to I'm not sure what conversation or experience arrived at that, but that was a critical thing for us to understand, because all the efforts by the community can only go so far without the Go leadership understanding the need and realizing that it's something that to really be successful, we need to make all of the tooling aware of. They could never bridge that gap. And so getting that understanding to the team was a critical milestone in this. There's still a long road ahead to delivering the right solution, and but the work that the working group is doing is a huge first step towards that.
And just to get that straight, Peter Burgon was leading the design and the specs, and Sam Boria is leading the implementation. Is that right?
I wouldn't frame it that way. I think Peter's leading the efforts. Peter is the one who really got the group together and ensured that they had meetings regularly and kind of set up the schedule. I'd call him more like a project lead. And there's 4 people on the working group, and I don't know if I think Sam is definitely one of the active people in that, but there's 4 of them. I think they're all contributing quite a bit. I'm not sure if one of them is the lead of it over another.
Yeah.
But I know they all meet regularly and are building stuff together.
Yeah, we had him talking to us 2 episodes ago, I think.
Yeah, I think it was 2 episodes back. But yeah, I think Sam focused on the packaging solver, kind of like the dependencies.
Yeah, Sam loves GPS and that problem. He's really spent a lot of time on it, so it makes sense that he'd be focused on it.
And I don't want to leave a question unanswered. Corey Lano was asking who is the person on the Google Cloud side that's doing the work of advocacy. I think that must be Francesc Campoy.
Yeah, Francesc is the advocate for all of Go and Google Cloud as well.
Got it.
So recently, this was, I think, just a couple of days ago, you had published the survey from 2016 on the Go blog. I'd love to chat a little bit about that and kind of maybe some of the things that surprised you, some of the things that you're proud about, things that you want to work on in the future based on what you observed from this.
Yeah, so for those who aren't familiar, the Go team has never done a survey of this kind before. And it was a pretty massive undertaking. And to be honest, I've never done a survey of this kind before either. But I recognize that there was definitely a need to to get data from our users and to listen to them and to collect as much information as we could. So we set out to create a survey and to get our users' voices heard, and we did, and we went through and we created a survey, refined it through user testing, and sent it to the community, and we had a phenomenal response. Over 3,500 people responded to the survey, and we gained lots of insights into the different ways that we can address the needs of the Go community. I will say a lot of the things that we learned were confirmations of things that we had already suspected. But by doing a survey, it gave us great metrics around knowing, okay, we know this is a problem for some users. Now we know this is a problem for 30% of users, right? Where before it was somewhat speculative how big of a problem different things were. So a lot of things were reinforcement, but also giving a lot more accuracy into the extent of some of the challenges that we had. And then, of course, there were some new things that surprised. I won't speak for the whole Go team, but there were definitely things in here that surprised me when I saw them.
So I think the other thing that doing the survey and having the metrics works well for is being able to basically timeline it out and to look next year and see how much you've grown and solve some of these problems and things. Prior to that, like you said, it's all been speculation.
I think one of the great things here is we do establish a baseline, and we're able to see progress and how the community and user base evolves over time.
Yeah, one of the things I was surprised to see was more than half of the participants said they use Go at work. And, we can only speculate about a couple of years ago, but I'd have to venture a guess that, there were a few big companies using Go, 2013, 2014, but I'd say most people were probably hobbyists back then. It certainly wasn't half.
Yeah, I mean, if we go back, it depends how far we go back, but there's certainly a point, probably around the first GopherCon, when it was clear that Go was of interest to a large group of people, and yet it had not caught on as much, or the adoption wasn't quite there. And that's a normal growth curve of any technology, is companies won't adopt something if there's not people that can do it, that know how to use it. So it really has to start with people's interest. And we were fortunate, I guess we were all fortunate that Go developed interest. And as we've seen it progress, companies are adopting Go and more readily. And so more and more users are being paid to write Go.
What do you think the developer pool looks like right now? Like, obviously, you can only speculate there, but do you think that people have a hard time finding Go developers right now?
So I think there's a number of different factors to this. The first one is Go is actually a really easy language to learn and to pick up, and especially to read. And this makes it so that a lot of companies aren't looking for Go developers. They're transitioning existing developers to Go. And that's a viable option. And we're seeing that a lot across a lot of companies. It's also the case that we don't have a great marketplace yet to find Go developers, especially ones with experience, because Go is relatively young. And so, a lot of job requisites say you need to have like 5 to 10 years Java experience or whatever the language is. It's going to be very hard to find a Go developer with 5 years experience. There's just not that many out there, as the language is pretty young. And so, it's kind of an interesting dynamic. I think in time, this is one of the things that'll definitely sort itself out. But, it's a combination of it's pretty easy to adopt Go. And at the same time, the language being so young, it's hard to find people with many years of experience.
This is where I think that obviously the makeup of the community is sort of critical as well, because I think in my travels to the Go community, I find very enthusiastic people, right, within the community. They're passionate about the language. And beyond that, they're passionate about building a great community, right? So if you're attracting people who not only care about the language, but they also care about sort of bringing everybody else, and basically attracting other people into the community, you're going to help solve this sort of supply versus demand problem that obviously the business is going to be looking at, right? So I think we do a lot within the Go community, sort of whether it's through meetups or through community events. There's a lot going on to sort of attract people to the community. I think that's going to help a lot.
Yeah, I think it's always a chicken and the egg problem here, but I think we've got a great community and really passionate people that love the language. And yes, a little more than half are using Go at work, which is great, but slightly higher number, the number of people who are programming Go outside of work. And these are mostly people who do it out of passion. And I think that just speaks to, these are people that love to program, and they found a language that they really love using. And, that's something that is that other people see and they catch on. I think there's some work that we need to do to make Go around the resources, not really changing the language, but better resources and more support around our new users. But I think there's a lot of the core ingredients there that make Go just a wonderful language and people are going to adopt it. And people are already adopting it at a pretty brisk pace, and I think that's going to continue.
So talking about community, there is so much to talk about community, and there's a lot about community in the survey. But one thing that caught my attention related to community is a question that says, what is the biggest challenge facing the Go project today? And the top answer with, 2%, there were many answers to that, but the top answer was community. And I don't know what that could mean. Do you have an idea, Steve?
Yeah, so one of the challenges we have with the survey is it's really easy to present accurate results with multiple choice or questions with already determined answers, and questions that had open text box answers. It's much harder to present that data. And what we've done here is a really kind of simple metric. It's just how often a given word appeared. And in the specific question you're talking about, there really wasn't anything that could be gleaned by using that approach. There were just too many words and not enough consistency across them. But reality is I was able to read all of the answers to every question. And that there was tens of thousands of comments that people left. And in this specific question, there really wasn't a theme that emerged. I don't think there are things that the users really fear as big challenges the Go project faces. I think there was a bunch of comments that people expressed, and a lot of them were, even comments that said, because of this, we don't really have concerns. So in this specific question, that chart is, there's not a lot you can gain from that chart.
All right. Yeah. Because basically, if I said, the community needs to come to a consensus on dependency management, right? Dependency management is actually the thing that should be bumped up, not the word community, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, a good example of a question where this did work well is when we asked people about what would improve the Go documentation. And overwhelmingly, the most common word was example.
Examples.
And in reading through the hundreds of responses that we got to that, it was very clearly the case that users want more examples. And so with that chart, popular word did demonstrate pretty well what people expressed.
Yeah.
Along those lines, do you think that the survey sort of tried to also gauge, okay, what other languages are people coming from, right, that are sort of adopting Go? I'd be interested in your take of whether Go itself is seen as an elitist language, right? Like that it attracts a certain kind of developer or a certain kind of individual with previous experience in other programming languages, be it dynamic or static. But do you think that Go is a good language for beginners, like people who've never programmed before? And Like, do you think there are things that we can do to sort of attract the brand new to programming kind of folks to the language, to the community?
Yeah, so there was, I heard a few different questions in there, and I'll try and address each of them. For me, one of the big surprises from the survey was often I think of Go, and I think most of us do, as a language that people convert to from a different language. Mostly, because Go is such a new language, most people already learned another language and they're coming to Go. And they bring with them, just like learning any new language, you kind of bring with you your foundation. And I think one of the interesting things that I learned from the survey was 1/3 of the people who said that they had experience in Go said that that was the language they had the most experience in, more than any other language. And this kind of, for me, conveyed the idea that Go isn't just a language for people to convert to. It's a language that people are learning programming through, that they're coming to it for the first time, or it's the language they've spent the most, I won't say most time in because we asked expertise, and time isn't a very accurate measure of expertise, but it's the language that they felt they had the most knowledge about and they felt the most comfortable using. So I think that was really interesting. I didn't expect that. And, partly, I guess I come in with my own perspective of, I knew a good number of languages before Go. But it's interesting that a lot of users consider it their language of most experience. In fact, more users were in that bucket than any other bucket.
I'm actually really surprised by that because I probably come in with the same preconceptions that most of us have experiences with other languages. We have years of history with those languages. So it takes a long time for our skill in Go to overtake our knowledge in a language we came from. So that's actually really surprising to hear that people are getting more experience and expertise in Go than the languages they came from.
Yeah. So I think, it's a bit of for me, what I realized was a lot of people are coming from dynamic languages. JavaScript and Python are the two biggest languages, and there's others in the list, but there are definitely some properties of dynamic languages that differ from Go. And, if we look at a lot of the documentation and the experience that the Go project has catered to with its early adopters, it wasn't as much the dynamic languages. And so for me, that was one thing that I learned through this. The second thing was what we just talked about, that a lot of people are coming to Go for the first time, or that their Go experience has eclipsed their experience in other languages.
So I think we're about time for our first sponsor break. But after that, I want to chat a little bit about the way people are using Go, because I found some of that stuff interesting too. So our first sponsor for today is Backtrace.
Software teams use Backtrace to take the headache and guesswork out of debugging across their environments. Backtrace jumps into action when your Go application fails by capturing detailed application state information, including the complete set of Go routines, channels and their wait durations, and my favorite, scheduler information. Backtrace analyzes this state and archives it in a centralized object store, allowing you to explore interesting patterns across your errors and plug rich error data into your resolution workflows. Backtrace is used by companies like Fastly, which is Changelog's bandwidth partner, Limelight Networks, Message Systems, AppNexus, and more. Head to backtrace.io/GoTime to learn more and start your free trial.
All right, we are back talking to Steve Francia, and we're talking about the 2016 survey results and kind of some of the stuff that we find interesting there. So before the break, I kind of mentioned the uses of Go. So one of the things that I actually found surprising was that web development actually seemed to overtake systems programming on there, because it felt, at least in the early days, that people struggled with how to do web stuff, because kind of like we were discussing, a lot of people come from JavaScript and Python and Ruby into Go. So they're used to having things like Django and Rails and things like that. So I actually find it really interesting that web development is kind of the leader in the uses.
So I'll clarify a little bit. We asked two questions, and they're easy to mix up because they're very related. One was what areas do you work in, And in that one, web development was overwhelmingly the number one option. And if I think about that, I think I work for Google. Is that a web development company? Probably is.
That's fair.
Google probably checks a lot of these boxes, actually. But the internet's such a prevalent part of what people do that, it at first I was surprised by that, but then the more I thought about it, the more I thought, there's a lot of companies that are in web development. And this was one of the questions where you could pick as many answers as you wanted. So, it does apply pretty broadly. But there's another question of what do you write in Go? And in this one, web services, as defined as a service returning HTML, was still over 50% of use cases, or of what people used Go to create. Now, this was another one where the total percentages added up far more than 100 because people could choose more than one. But I think it's illustrative that there's no question people are creating web services with Go and in large amounts.
Yeah, and even though they don't rank as high on the list, other surprising ones that were in there were embedded devices, people writing Internet of Things devices using Go.
Yeah, it was interesting, the spectrum that in the options that we asked, a lot of them were well represented. It showed a lot more diversity than I expected. And I'll just speak for myself in there. I was surprised by the diversity of the different areas that people worked in and used Go.
Yeah, I've heard of some embedded stuff and security stuff, but I didn't think it was enough to register. I didn't think it would show up. I thought it would kind of be lumped into other.
So when you look at these answers in particular, Steve, do you have a feeling that the answers that are more popular are the areas where you want to invest in, or the opposite? You want to bring up the areas that are less popular?
It's a good question. I honestly don't think popularity was a big factor for what we were going to invest in alone. I think it's a combination of looking at where our weaknesses are and comparing that to what the demand is for those things and trying to pair those together. And, a lot of this post identifies some of our, I'll call them challenges that we have ahead of us. And one of the things that I felt best from this was most of the challenges, the vast majority of the challenges identified were ones that were, I'll call growing pains for a new technology that's really emerging into the mainstream. Not many of the challenges were really fundamental things. In fact, I would posit that none of them were things that were fundamental to the language or the ecosystem. So it gave me a lot of confidence knowing, yes, like everything, we have challenges ahead of us, but to meet those challenges, it's going to require effort from us and the community to do it, but they're not fundamental things that we can't fix. And, I think if we look at the challenges, many of them would apply across all of those industries or most of those industries. There were not many challenges that we looked at that, applied only to one.
And what challenges are these that you're thinking about?
For me, from reading through all of this, I think we identified a number of challenges. When we asked people what changes would improve Go most, they identified pretty clearly what I think are two of our biggest challenges. One is the lack of generics. I know it's for sometimes we feel like it's a broken record, but we recognize it's a challenge. It's something that the Go team stance hasn't changed. It continues to be that we're looking into a solution there. Package management was the second highest identified change that would improve Go the most. And now we look beyond those, just what would improve Go, and we see another picture of people's user experience. And so when we ask people what's the biggest challenge they face using Go, it kind of shed some new light on people's individual challenges. And some of the things that were identified in that were there's a steeper learning curve and our documentation and tutorials are lacking. And as we talked about, examples was a big part of that. And there's also something that came forward here, which was it's not the easiest thing for users to convey the value of Go to other people, particularly to their management. And I think there's a lot of things we can do there, but one of the things that I thought of, it seems pretty obvious, was there's a lot of companies that are using Go for lots of different things that most people don't have any idea about. And I think it would do our whole ecosystem a lot of good to talk to these companies, get them, if they're willing to, have them do a case study and post that. And in a central place. I think there's a lot of places where we can point to, this company is using Go and how it transformed them, and this other company, because of Go, they were able to reduce their cost, and because of Go with this other company, they were able to deliver a project much faster than they would have with their existing systems. So I think there's a lot that we can do to kind of just surface some of the great things that Go is already doing. And that'll help some of these challenges.
Is there somewhere like a canonical place for case studies for people who do that? I know we commonly see them pop up on Reddit and Hacker News and, reduced from 2,000 servers to 2 and things like that. But I don't think there's a single place that we could point an executive to show them a bunch of case studies.
There isn't that I'm aware of today, but I believe that there will be sometime during 2017, or at least I'd like there to be. And I think you also point to Go is changing, or I'll say the audience for Go is changing a bit. And if you look at like our webpage and the material around it, it hasn't changed in a number of years. It's really catered towards the early adopter. And the early adopter is not our audience anymore. The early adopters adopted it. And now we're going for the later adopters, the more mainstream adopters, and more of the decision makers. So I think there's work to be done on adjusting our messaging to match the audience of today. And I think case studies is part of that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's difficult too, even just in the convincing teammates thing, right? Even people who have been in the Go world for a number of years, it's, give me your elevator pitch for why you should use Go. And it's really hard to think of just like a silver bullet. It's all the little things kind of combined that make it so great to work with.
Yeah, there was I don't want to misquote our users, but I think what came through from reading all the commentary was people that use Go really love it. I think it was pretty clear, like if you try Go, you'll see why. But it's hard to convey that until you try it. And I think you articulated well why. It's not like there's two things that we could, Go does this, so you should use it. It's really a bunch of little things that come together to really make a great experience.
I usually tell people that they have to try it and stick to it for a while so they can get that experience. It doesn't come right away. It's not like you write a hello world little program and you get it. It's like,
but there's a struggle in learning or adopting any technology. And you need to, I think Katrina Owen put it really well during her talk. It's like your need for learning it needs to overcome your need to quit. So you have to have a reason to want to learn that so bad that you kind of suffer through what you find to be oddities in the language because it's different than what you're used to for you to get the comfort and the love for the language. So I think it's really hard to it's like convincing somebody to use Vim, right? I can tell them like, no, it's great. You're going to be super productive in it. And they're still going to look at me like, yeah, but the learning curve,
So yeah, I think that's well put, and there's really two different ways to address that, and if we do it right, we'll address them both. One is reduce that learning curve, right? Get rid of a lot of the parts that are painful for people, make it easier to learn. And the second one is demonstrate the value that people would receive from learning this. And there's lots of different approaches to doing that. And I think one of them would be highlight or showcase success stories using Go. So I think if we can approach it from both sides, that's definitely something that we collectively as the Go community can help to improve. I definitely know that's something I'm going to be focused on over the next year.
So, talking about what you're going to be focused on over the next year, can you give us an idea of what's on the pipeline, the order, the priorities? What's the biggest thing for this year?
So, for me, my role is really going to be focused on the user experience and what it means to be part of our community, and supporting that as much as possible. I can't give you my full playbook for the year because honestly, I'm still writing it. I think it's a very evolving thing, but I can tell you some of the highlights of it. One area we're trying to improve is the ability for people to contribute to the Go project, and in additional capacities, not just in programming, but in other capacities. And there's efforts underway to improve that, and we hope to really increase the number of contributors to the Go project. We're also trying to build more open and inclusive, we'll call them community working groups, where people are in an organized working group and working towards a solution or to address a need in Go. This is a somewhat new territory for Go, and every community needs to figure out how it's going to do this. And that's in the place that we're in. We're trying to figure it out. We're going to run a little experiment over the next few months with our first inclusive working group, which you'll be hearing about pretty soon. And with that, we're hoping to be the prototype that we can use more and more. Other things that I'm working on is trying to, first just make sure that all of the events around the world are supported. There's a number of Go conferences, which all of you on the call know about, as all of you are responsible for at least one of them, actually, and so am I. So we're all responsible for at least one of them. And there's the conferences, and then there's meetups all over the world. So we're trying to get a program set up to support those and make sure that they have all the things that they need. And then I'm also working pretty hard on the new user experience, what it feels like coming to Go. From the very beginning of going to our website to installing Go to going through, whether it's the tour or the documentation, but what it is to learn Go. And I think that's going to keep me busy for most of the year doing those things. And a lot of these things are somewhat interactive and experimental. We're going to try things and do experiments, and some of them are going to work, and we're going to double down on the ones that do. And some of them aren't going to work, and we're going to learn why, and we're going to try and continue to evolve our approach.
So one of the things you mentioned was actually contributing, and I want to dig into that a little bit. But first, let's take our second sponsor break. Our second sponsor for today is Ultimate Go. Our friends at Arden Labs offer some of the best training classes for Go, web, and data science folks. They've trained over 1,000 students from all over the world over the past 2 years. They offer corporate training in Go, web, and data science taught by Bill Kennedy, Daniel Whitenack, and John Gossett. Bill wrote the Go in Action book, and all three have given talks at conferences and events all over the world. They offer 2 and 3 full-day intensive courses that literally take any developer to a whole new level. The classes teach specification, implementation, mechanics, guidelines, and best practices with a lot of personal experience. They also provide a high-energy environment to keep those involved excited and focused throughout the class. Even your most experienced developers will get something out of every class. To learn more, head to ardenlabs.com/GoTime and tell them Eric from GoTime sent you. All right, and we're back talking to Steve Francia. So before we took the sponsor break, we were kind of talking about kind of your goals for this year and stuff. And you had mentioned contribution to the project. And that actually kind of was really interesting to see how many people felt that they weren't welcome. And it really took me off guard too, because like I've always thought like the Go community was very welcoming. Did you get anything from maybe the comments about why people might not have felt welcome? Is it just it's overwhelming to look at the project and figure out how to contribute, or is it the community?
Yeah, I I'll say what my opinion is about this, and I don't remember. I can't speak to if the survey responses, because we didn't ask this specific question, like as a free text response. But I think one of the things is, if you look at the Go team, this is my personal opinion. I look at the Go team, and I see Rob Pike and Robert Griesmeyer and Ken Thompson and Brad Fitzpatrick and Russ Cox and all these people, Ian Lance Taylor, just people, luminaries who had long careers of really successful technologies and books, and it's easy to be intimidated and feel like you can't live up to it, or what value could I add to the efforts. And I was talking to Katrina Owen about this, and I asked her, like, how do you feel? And she said, I feel like as long as I'm one of the smartest people alive, then I'm welcome to contribute. And I think that, and I'm paraphrasing her, so I'll be clear that those weren't her exact words, but I kind of felt the same way. And then I became a member of the Go team, and I thought to myself, well, I guess I am smart enough. But I remember feeling that way, before I joined the team, and I remember, going through this experience of, well, they hired me. I suppose I am smart enough, and now I'm starting to make contributions to the project. But I think it is intimidating, and I think there's also the sense of that they don't need my help, and I want to dispel both of those myths. The first one is we do need your help. There's a lot of work to be done, and we absolutely do need more people to contribute. The project will not be as successful as it should be without your help. To the second one, you are smart enough to contribute, and reality is, don't be discouraged when people give you feedback that you need to make changes. I've been fortunate for the last few months to see how the team interacts with each other, and they are constantly giving each other feedback. And it is very normal for people to go through, many revisions of something before they get it right. That's how you learn. That's how you grow. And so, the team is willing to give that kind of feedback and invest in people so they will learn. And, it's actually, I think, a really great opportunity to be able to make contributions. And even if you don't feel like you're ready today, this is how you become ready. Like, give it a try, get the feedback, and try and do your best. And there's also lots of different entry points into the project. Like, I am not qualified to contribute to the compiler or to the linker, and I'm not gonna. But there's plenty of areas in the project that I do feel that I can contribute. There's parts of the standard library. There's definitely parts of the website and documentation that I feel like I can contribute to. And so, regardless of your technical experience, there's different areas that you're going to be able to contribute to. And through that, you'll learn the process, and you'll get to know the people, and you'll be adding a lot of value.
I guess that's a fair observation too, that a lot of people might feel intimidated and embarrassed, when their code review comes up the way they do and things. And not everybody perceives the feedback the same way, right? Like, some people take it more personally. Other people just see it as, a learning opportunity to learn from people who know and understand the language and the project better.
Yeah. This is also one of the few questions where, because we were able to segment the data in lots of different ways and try and learn from that. This was one of the few questions where people that were not active Go users, as defined by, they didn't select, I use Go at work, and I use Go not at work, right? So if they didn't select either of those options, this was one of the questions that they actually scored better on. So non-active Go users felt more welcome to contribute to the project than active Go users. And what conclusions can we draw from that? I don't think we can draw exact conclusions, but I think we can speculate that it's likely because they aren't as familiar with the process. right? So, you always feel welcome until you're closer. And then you recognize that, oh, this is kind of intimidating.
Yeah, and I think some of the other stuff too is, there's a lot of quick wins and stuff in the GitHub issues and things. Some of the Garrett stuff can get confusing, but there's also a lot of formal papers that go back and forth and working documents where people will work on, you always see the big changes come through that way. And a lot of people aren't used to working in that process either. They're used to kind of taking a ticket and kind of working on it as opposed to, collaborating on a big document or specification before kind of digging in. So I wonder if some of that also adds to the intimidation of what's required to be involved.
Yeah. So for me, there's been a bit of a culture shift joining Google and joining the Go team because most of my background's startups. And, this is something I'm really trying to learn this lesson is the Go team really cares about getting things right and doing things the right way. And in startups, there's often pressure to get something now versus something perfect. And I won't say that the Go team strives, I would say we probably do strive for perfection, but, they're trying to do the best job possible. It is a bit of a shift to think, okay, I felt like this is good enough, but they want me to make, 4 more changes. And at the end of the day, for me, I'm trying to learn the lesson. This is just making it all better, right? It makes me look better, having contributed something even of higher quality. But it really is raising the bar from what I'm used to. And, it's interesting to get that feedback. I will say when Russ gives feedback on things, I meet with him weekly, and I still step back a little and say, whoa, what can I learn from this? And, I can't believe I'm actually getting feedback from, Russ or Rob or whoever it is, or Ian. But, there's definitely part of it is recognize that they're trying to make you or your contributions even better than they are. So it's not about rejecting you or your contributions. It's about helping to make them even better.
Yeah, I think that's important to take the feedback constructively, that it's not a personal attack. And it's really hard sometimes, and there's occasional time. I remember one of the first contributions I ever tried to make, this is a few years ago. Several of the Go team, I think, were going back and forth on the ticket they each had their own theory on how it should work. And finally I was like, all right, I give up on this one because it was like volleying back and forth between the two. And, you just take it in stride. You're like, okay, there seems to be, a lot of internal discussion on the implementation of this. This probably isn't the right ticket. And I just kind of moved on to another one. But a lot of people will take that personally, that, it's lost time and this, that, and the other. And it's difficult.
It's also it's an observation I've made over the last few months. If there's not a right answer that emerges, the Go team leadership is not against postponing it until there is one. So that the need to have something versus the need to have the right thing is, again, this for me is a bit of a culture shift. There's a lot of things where it'd be nice to have this, but we don't really know the right way to do it yet. We're going to continue to think about it, but we're okay with waiting until we have the right answer.
And I think that's one of the things when we talk about like the little things that are a part of the language and just the way the team and the community operates. I think that's one of the things we can appreciate because Go doesn't have a lot of baggage and weird quirks because of these things that were just kind of rushed in. And now, there's tons of code out in the wild that requires it, so it can't be removed or fixed.
JavaScript.
Yeah, it's been really enlightening to me to see. So I'll say one of the real privileges of my job is to participate in our weekly proposal review meeting and to see the thought and care that goes into every single proposal, which anyone can make. Anyone can make a proposal as an issue on GitHub. And every single week, or almost every single week, you've got the Go project leadership reviews that and takes time and thought and talks about every single one. And just to see the care and attention that goes into every one of these ideas that are proposed has been just a real treat for me.
And Johnny, were you about to say something?
No, I was taking a jab at JavaScript when you said rushing things out and paying for the consequences later. But I mean, to your point, Steve, I think there's also, it's hard to sort of interpret like tone, right? And when you're getting the feedback, usually, I mean, just today I was watching, some feedback between Matt Aminetti, well-known member of the community, making a suggestion, for GoVet to sort of raise a flag when, you don't have enough members sort of for your SQL when you're reading information back and assigning it to some sort of structure, whatever it is, when you don't have enough of those values. So basically, he's raising that as a, hey, it would be nice if GoVet could sort of flag that, right? And then sort of the Go team members sort of were chiming in, going back and forth. Although it was very cordial, but the back and forth was sort of very to the point. There was no sugarcoating. There was no, it was all about sort of the technical details or implications of taking on such a feature. The things that perhaps Matt didn't know about, that the Go team knows about. It was a very quick back and forth. There was no, from the outside looking in, you're thinking, wow, is the Go team like mad at him for making these suggestions? But I'm pretty sure that's not how they're seeing it. It's really just about giving you the raw technical impact of that feedback, that raw feedback, right? There was no sugarcoating about it. And I think that's something that can be very intimidating for somebody who's not used to working that way, where you might be working in an environment where, people had to sort of use a lot of buffer words, to sort of make you read in between the lines kind of thing. It's really not that way at all when interacting with the Go team, I've found.
I think that when people are very busy, as the Go team, I'm sure is, that they skip a lot of the pleasantries. And, the Go team's responses are very succinct and matter of fact, right? And people read it the way they mean to read it. So if you come into the process feeling intimidated, and then you get a very succinct answer, you feel like you're being shrugged off because they're validating your fear of not being worthy type of ordeal. Whereas people who are regular contributors are just used to it's just a quick response, so they don't really read too much into it.
Yeah, I think you've said it well too. Is I think, and this is something that I know the Go team is actually working on. The fact is people are taking a step of courage to propose something or to send a patch, and they have a lot of emotion sometimes riding on that. And when you have someone who you admire, I will say shoot you down, even though that's not what's happening. That's the way it sometimes feels. You definitely react differently. And I know as a team, we've been working on how to communicate in a way that's encouraging. And it's something it's a work in progress. But I've seen in my 6-7 months here, I've seen improvement of that people are not just saying no, but saying either here's why no, or here's what we'd need for this to go further. Sort of give them a kind of a path forward rather than just a wall. And I think that's a big thing for us, the Go team's learning, is that people take our words with a lot more weight than sometimes we realize. And, we're trying to be better about understanding people's feelings, and that's something we're working on. But I will say the team itself cares deeply about their users and community and each other. I've honestly never been part of a team that really supported each other as well as this team. And, I see the way that we talk about the community and the amount of time and attention we spend on the users. And, it's remarkable to me that comes across being on the team of how much they really do care and value each user and contributor, even if sometimes in their messaging, it doesn't come across.
I think even outside community involvement helps too, right? Most in the same respect that like team building exercises help, with coworkers, right? You interact with people in a different forum and you learn that they're people and things like that. And then your interactions with them in the work environment are perceived differently. So like I know coming from me personally, getting to see and watch the Go team interact with people at conferences really shows how much they care about what people are using the language for, and that it's meeting their needs and things like that. So when you see those succinct or matter of fact responses, you don't really think about it much because you've seen them as a person. And people new to the community and things like that may only see them, for the prestige of the things that they've done and their current roles. So when they see that response, it carries more weight, like you said.
It's also the case that, the team itself knows each other pretty well. And some of the more active contributors, I think you always need to be reminded of, a lot of our conversations and dialogue are done completely open and transparent. I'd say the vast majority of it. And even if we know each other well, we can be short with each other, but lots of people are reading that don't know our relationship already. And so sometimes we need to be reminded that even if we have a good relationship and we're interacting back and forth, there's still a need to be mindful of the people who see that and aren't aware, right? Or don't know us already.
So I know you're a pretty busy guy, and I think we're about out of time. I think we have a couple of minutes, though, if everybody wants to do Free Software Friday.
I actually don't have one today.
How about you, Johnny? You want to give a shout out to a project or a maintainer?
Yeah, definitely. Go Buffalo. I've been sort of playing around with it to sort of stand up a project that I've taken on. And I was quite surprised how easy it was to sort of get going. I mean, obviously beyond reading just the introductory stuff on the main page, I think it's gobuffalo.io. It's was really quite easy to get going. So kudos to Mark Bates, the lead contributor to that. Kudos for a very good job. I'm looking forward to contributing something back to that.
And how about you, Steve? Did you want to give a shout out to anybody?
So for me, the one project that I use more than any other project is Fatih's Vim Go project. And, I've been a longtime user of Vim, and one of my projects that's been popular for a while is my Vim distribution, which is really just my own personal Vim configuration that happens to be adopted by tens of thousands of people. And that's really what happened. I'm not being short when I say that. It wasn't intended to be a project. It was just my Vim configuration. But to see what Fatih has done with the Go integration is just phenomenal. And the amount of time and effort that he puts into it, it really benefits me a lot. And as the survey demonstrated, a lot of our users. I was shocked to see how many users were Vim users in Go.
Yeah, I think it was Vim and VSCode that were kind of topping everybody out.
Well, Vim was overwhelmingly the most used, and VSCode it was, for me, shockingly the second most, given how young it is. But it just barely edged out
Over Atom,
IntelliJ and Atom and Sublime.
Okay, so Vim Go kind of like far surpassed number 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Fatih's work on that has just been tremendous. That's, I use it as well. And he's got a Patreon set up too for anybody who uses that. We all love to show support to people who work on these projects and give up their free time. So one that I actually only recently started using, which is really cool, is I guess it's called USQL for Universal SQL. And it's written in Go, and it allows you to talk to SQLite, Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL, Postgres, all using kind of the same command line tool. And one of the cool things that I liked about it was there's future plans for things like Cassandra and CockroachDB and things like that. So I thought that was really cool. I'm always struggling to find database tools. I like consistency. I hate having to learn like a new command line tool to interact with each database type. All right. So with that, I want to thank everybody for being on the show. Huge thank you to you, Steve, for coming on the show and talking with us today.
Happy to do it. Thanks for inviting me.
And thank you to all the listeners who are listening live and will be listening to this. Huge shout out to our sponsors, Backtrace and Ultimate Go. Forward this to anybody you know who might like to listen to our weekly podcast. We are at GoTime FM on Twitter, github.com/GoTimeFM/ping if you want to be on the show or have suggestions for topics or guests. And with that, goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
All right, that wraps up this episode of Go Time. Tune in live on Thursdays at 3 p.m. U.S. Eastern at changelog.com/live. Join the community and Slack with us in real time. Head to changelog.com/community. Follow us on Twitter. We're at GoTimeFM. Special thanks to our sponsors, Backtrace and Ultimate Go. Also thanks to Fastly, our bandwidth partner. Head to fastly.com to learn more. This episode was edited by Jonathan Youngblood, and the theme music for Go Time is produced by Breakmaster Cylinder. We'll see you again next week. Thanks for listening.